Okay, we shall start now. So in the last class, we talked about Farkas lemma. Okay. Now in this class, we want to talk about the fundamental theorems of linear programming. See, in a linear programming, what do? You try to minimize a linear function subject to certain linear constraints. So, which defines a convex polyhedron, and we call it the feasible set, right? So it is the linear objective function on a convex set. So one property about that linear objective function, if you are trying to minimize or maximize a linear objective function over a convex set, is that a local minimum is a global minimum itself. It's an absolute minimum. The region is very easy to see. Assume that you have some kind of a convex set, and say suppose you have a point, and here is it is an this point is A, and this is a local minimum. What is local minimum? Local minimum means for all x belonging to some b epsilon A intersection T. So for all feasible points within a radius of this epsilon, we should have fx greater than equal to fa. So A is the point of local minimum. Okay, that's what it is. Now I want to say that it is an absolute minimum, a global minimum. So for that matter, take any y in the set. Okay, so take for that matter, take any y in the set T. Now what do you do? Now you join A to y. Look at the line segment joining A and y, and then pick that whole line segment will be there in T, because A is in T, y is in T, the whole line segment will be there in T. Now what you do, now you pick a point which is inside the ball. Okay, so what is that? Now you can take A, so y in T and y not equal to A. Okay, of course, y is a different point. Then you have to pick something like A plus epsilon by 2, that's the amount, magnitude, and then in the direction of y starting from A, so that will be y minus A divided by y minus A naught. So if you consider this point Z, then this Z will be inside that B epsilon A intersection T. Okay, and therefore Fz should be greater than equal to f of A, because this is what? Because it is a local minimum, as you said. But then Fz is nothing but what? Because the function is fx is C transpose x. So this is nothing but f of A plus epsilon by 2 y minus A norm f of y minus A. And so cancel fa. So what you will get is that f of y minus f of A is greater than equal to 0. So that's what we wanted to show, that for any arbitrary y in T, f of y is greater than equal to fa. So that's the global minimum. Okay, so that is one thing that we know. So we don't have to worry about other things. Now some more properties. Imagine that you are looking at minimizing C transpose X subject to the polyhedron X less than equal to B, X greater than equal to 0. This is bounded below, okay, subject to this. Then the following statements are true. Look at A. Item A says, then T is a closed convex bounded below set. That is true. because we already have seen it. Okay, it is a closed convex set which is bounded below. The second point is the set of minimum solutions is closed, convex and bounded below. The set of minimum solutions, whatever are the minimum solutions points, that set will be a subset of the bigger set, and bigger set is bounded below. So this is bounded below. The set of minimum solution is convex. That is true, because if you take two minimum solutions and take a convex combination of them, that will also be a minimum solution. And it is closed because a sequence of minimum solution, if it converges to a point, that will also be a minimum solution. It will actually be inside the set T because T is closed, and so therefore you can proceed. So what is more important is item C. Item C says if a minimum solution exists, then the minimum solution is also attained at a vertex. Okay, so you are looking at T and somebody has said that minimum solution exists, and then your claim is that the minimum solution exists at a vertex. Okay, now first of all, so you just take your let me take the convex set, something like that. So you have your convex set. I will draw like this. Suppose that it is given that minimum solution exists at a point A. This is where the minimum solution exists. Where is A? I have no idea where is A. It is inside the set T. Okay. So there are two choices. Because A is a point of T, either A is an interior point or A is a boundary point. Okay, I remember that part, no problem. So first of all, what about T? Now T is a convex polyhedron and bounded below. Is it non-empty? Now yes, A is there. Minimum is attained at A. So it is non-empty. So therefore there will be a vertex. You remember we have already proved that a non-empty polyhedron bounded below, it has a vertex. So let V be a vertex. Okay, so I have a vertex V. Fine, V is a vertex. Then what? Now I want to say, see, look, what is A? Now A is the global minimum. I mean, there may be more minimum, point of minimums, but A is one. Okay. So what can be the value of V? Now value at V can only be greater than equal to. This is the only possibility. V is a vertex. Okay. Now if the equality holds, then we have nothing to prove because we wanted to show the minimum is attained. Otherwise, so equality, we are done. If we have, otherwise assume f of V is strictly bigger than f of A. Okay, this is what you assume. Acha. F of V is strictly bigger than f of A. Fine. Now I will make it two different cases. Or rather I will show that A cannot be a point of interior. Let's see. Suppose that A is a point of interior. So in that case, you will have a ball around A, some B epsilon A of epsilon radius. Okay, this is B epsilon A. Okay. And then what? Now remember what is the value at V, and that is bigger. So what you do, start from V and go towards A. Throughout this, what is happening now? Throughout this, the functional value FV is like starting from FB, while you are going to FA, the functional value is decreasing. So what you do, you proceed a little further. You go to this point, just proceed a little further. So which point are you going now? You are going to this particular point is what? A plus what is that? The same thing, similar, a minus b divided by a minus b norm, this particular point. So then it is easier to show that at this point the functional value is lesser than fa. Okay, at this particular point the functional value will be lesser than fa, so you will have a contradiction. So then what? Now in that case the only possibility, so you will get a contradiction over here. So the only possibility remains is that a belongs to delta t. If b is greater than fa, that is fine, and I have fine enough. I have a belongs to delta t, the boundary. Now the moment you have, so this is not the picture, you have this, and a is the absolute minimum, that is on the boundary. So what you do in that case, the moment you have it on the boundary, you consider a supporting hyperplane at A and take its intersection with T. What is the supporting hyperplane? Supporting hyperplane, you can write H is equal to some D transpose X equal to some alpha. Okay, this is the equation. You write this. Now in that case, what about H intersection T? Is it a polyhedron? No, yes. It is a polyhedron because this is the set of all x such that x less than equal to b, x greater than equal to 0, and then D transpose x less than equal to alpha, and minus D transpose x less than equal to minus alpha. So this is, after all, this is like two extra, half spaces intersection. So this is a polyhedron. This is bounded below. Now of course it is bounded below. You have written x greater than equal to 0. It is bounded below. Non-empty, now yes, a belongs to here. Acha, structure is lesser dimension. Okay, so according to the theorem statement, that is item C statement, the minimum of fx over H intersection T is attained at some vertex, let me call it W of H intersection T. Okay. Acha, the minimum of fx over H intersection T is attained some vertex W of H intersection T. Let me see what are the conclusions from here. Now here one conclusion is that f of W is less than equal to f of A. Now why is that? Now A was also a point of H intersection T and W is just a minimum point. So FW is less than equal to f of A, but it cannot be lesser because over the whole set T, A was the point of minimum. So therefore it follows that FW is actually equal to, this is actually equal to FW. So what you have found now, okay, you have found a vertex of H intersection T with the same value of as of FA. Okay, but then a vertex of H intersection T is also a vertex of T. Okay, and that was the M, to show that the minimum is also attained at a vertex of T. Okay, you may ask, like, why did we consider that f of V, that vertex? Well, that vertex we considered just to tell that the point A cannot be a point of interior. We just used that to bring I mean, conclude that A belongs to delta T. Okay. Okay, so this is the fundamental theorem of linear programming. This is one. What it says? It says if the feasible set is non-empty, bounded, then the minimum is attained at a vertex. Well, the function, if T is bounded, so then we have T a non-empty compact convex set. Now, because it is a compact set, whenever you have a continuous function, here we are considering linear functions, the minimum will be attained. And the moment the minimum is attained by using item C, the minimum is attained at a vertex. So this proof is not difficult. The second one is very similar to the first one, FTLP2, the fundamental theorem of linear programming 2. What does it say? It says if T is non-empty, and here it does not say T is bounded, it says F is bounded below. If F is bounded below, then also the minimum is attained at a vertex. So here all you have to show is that the minimum is attained. As soon as the minimum is attained, you can use item C to say that the minimum is attained at a vertex. Okay. Now you can try to prove that by contradiction. First of all, since the set is non-empty, there is a point A. Okay. There is some point A. Okay, fine. If this is the minimum, then we are done. So assume this is not the minimum. If this is not the minimum, then there is another point B at which the functional value is smaller. Okay. In that case, so imagine you have the point A and another point B where functional value is smaller than that of A. Now these are 2 points. Now imagine the ray that starts from A and goes in the direction of B. Consider that. See, that whole ray cannot be inside T. Why? Now because as you start from A and go towards B, the functional value is decreasing. And if you are able to travel indefinitely, then it will mean that the function goes to minus infinity. Function will not be bounded below, because by moving from A to B, the function, because it is a linear function, so the function suppose decreases by epsilon. Well, by moving that many amount, again you will decrease by epsilon, you will decrease by epsilon again, many times. So function will go to minus infinity. But since the function is given to be bounded below, so you will have to stop at a point. So there will come a point, there will be a point you call, so you can call it D or something. Okay, so there is a point D in T, so at which you will stop. You will stop. What does this mean? We will stop. I mean, I am talking very informally. What does this mean? Now look, if you are really looking at this ray, then the ray looks like this one. It will start from the point A. Okay, so set wise I can write this as set of all A plus lambda times B minus A, lambda greater than equal to 0. All this is the this thing. This is the ray. Okay, and this is a convex set. Okay, and the set T is also a convex set. Okay, this whole ray is not going to be there. Okay, and the intersection of two convex set is a convex set. Okay, so imagine this ray intersection this set. And then I am claiming that in that case, there are two possibilities. The intersection either will be this full ray. Okay, intersection is either the full ray because it is convex, or it will be of the form A to some A plus lambda naught B minus A. It will be of this form. So in that case, this is the one that I am saying D. Okay, so you will be reaching at, and D will be a boundary point. Why boundary point? Now if D is not a boundary point, it will be an interior point, so some ball will be available. In that case, you could proceed a little further even. Okay, so in that is why D is a boundary point, and because D is a boundary point, you will have a hyperplane passing through D, a supporting hyperplane. Okay, fine. So what you are going to have now, then you look at the supporting hyperplane H intersection T. This is the supporting hyperplane. It passes through D. Okay, fine. By the way, tell me what is the value of what is f of D? Now f of D, definitely D is obtained after B. Okay, A and B are definitely there. And if you are not even able to proceed from B, at least D will be equal to B. You will be staying there. F of D is always less than f of A. That you have got. Fine. Now, so you are looking at this supporting hyperplane intersection T. It is a polyhedron. Now again, yes, it is a polyhedron. We just had argued it is a polyhedron. Fine. Non-empty polyhedron. D is there. Bounded below. Yes. The whole set was bounded below. So subset will also be bounded below. No problem. And so in that case, I mean, sorry, I am not talking about this thing. So is the function bounded below over H intersection T? Now yes, function was bounded below over the bigger set. So function will be bounded below in the subset. That is also fine. So in that case, the minimum of the function, minimum over H intersection T, X belonging to H intersection T, Fx will be attained at some vertex where W is a vertex of H intersection T. Will be attained at a vertex by induction. Oh, okay. But that is not the minimum. That is not the minimum of F over T. It is not the minimum. But you have found a vertex of H intersection T. But then vertex of H intersection T is also a vertex of T. So what has happened? Now, this is the statement that you have shown. A is not a point of minimum implies there exists a vertex such that, so here there exists a vertex, we have got W, so let me write W. Vertex such that f of W is strictly lesser than f of A. That's what you have proved. Okay, so as T was non-empty, I had a point. If it is not a point of minimum, I will get a vertex V1 such that f V1 is strictly lesser. Now I will ask the same question. Is V1 the point of minimum? No. Then there will exist another vertex V2 such that f V2 is strictly lesser. Is V2 a point of minimum? No. Then you will have another vertex V3 at which the functional value is lesser. And this process has to stop because T the feasible set being a polyhedron can have only finitely many vertices. You see, each of these vertices v1, v2, v3 are distinct because fv2 is strictly lesser than fv1. They have to be distinct. So this process has to stop because T has finitely many vertices. So that ends the proof. So here are some exercises. We'll come to this place. This is kind of asking the converse. See what does fundamental theorem say, or whatever we have learned till now. What is that? Now, if I have the feasible set T, and I have a linear function, and the item C said if the minimum is attained, then the minimum is attained at a vertex. That's what item C said. Okay. Then fundamental theorem of linear programming 1 said one condition. It said if I take T to be non-empty bounded, minimum will be attained, therefore it will be attained at a vertex. And then the second one said non-empty, T is non-empty, function is bounded below, then also the minimum will be attained. So that's what it is. Now here we are asking something opposite. Suppose that I have given you a set T of the form polyhedron Ax greater than equal to B. Notice here I am writing Ax greater than equal to B. Okay, not less than equal to B, but just writing greater than equal to B. I will tell why I am writing so. And suppose that I have given you a vertex W. Now I am asking, can you give me a linear function C transpose X which is minimized at W? Like fundamental theorem said, a linear function will always be minimized at a vertex if it is minimized, if the minimum exists. So I am saying what kind of linear functions will be minimized at a given vertex? That's the question. Okay, so I will give the graphical interpretation, but before that let me tell the following. So first of all, this item says if C transpose is a non-negative combination of the rows of AW. Okay, remember what is AW? Now AW, see, you have A and then you have W, rather Ax greater than equal to B. Let me put so greater than equal to, this is B. Okay, so you substitute W there, whatever are the equality, whichever row corresponds to equality, collect those rows and that is your AW. Okay, AW corresponds to that only, corresponds to the equalities in this. Okay, fine. So assume that C transpose is a non-negative combination of this. So I want to show that W is a minimum. Okay, so in that case, to show that, let X belong to T. And what do I want to show? Now I want to show that C transpose X is greater than equal to C transpose W, Fx, that is Fx greater than equal to. But then C transpose, as you said, is equal to lambda transpose. Lambda here is a vector, AWX. Okay, but then since X belongs to T, it means Ax satisfies greater than equal to B, and therefore in particular it satisfies AWX greater than equal to BW. That is the part. Okay, that is the part of the matrix, And then the other part of the matrix is AW bar X greater than equal to BW bar. Okay. Okay, so this is greater than equal to lambda transpose AWX is greater than equal to BW. But what is BW? Now BW is actually equal to AWW because those are the equalities, right? These are obtained by that lambda transpose AWW. But then lambda transpose AW is C only, C transpose only. So C transpose W. So you wanted to show C transpose X greater than equal to C transpose W. So that is what it is. Okay. That part is fine. Now, the other part is more interesting. What it says, suppose that you have a C and Fx equal to C transpose X is minimized at the vertex W. Then it says C transpose, then it says, then there exists a vector lambda greater than equal to 0 such that C transpose is equal to lambda transpose AW. That is what it says. Okay. That is C transpose is a non-negative linear combination of the rows of AW. Hypothesis, W is a minimum. Okay. This is where I want to say something. So W is a vertex. Okay. Take W vertex. What are these? Now these represent the equalities. These correspond to the rows of AW. That means they correspond to the hyperplanes that are passing through W. Okay, and these are supporting hyperplanes. These are hyperplanes that support the whole T at W. Okay, and support positively or negatively. Now this is where I said, this is why I have taken AX greater than equal to B. AX greater than equal to B means the whole set is supported positively. That means all these supporting hyperplanes, the hyperplanes corresponding to the rows in AW are supporting hyperplanes to T at W, and they contain T in their positive half spaces. Okay, so this is the case, and W is a minimum over T. That is what is given. Now this cone that you are looking, what is the cone? This is an affine cone. The set of all x such that AWX greater than equal to BW. This is this whole cone. Okay, this whole cone, whole affine cone, and that contains T in particular. Okay, that is this. Now, what I am going to claim, is that over this whole cone, W is the point of minimum. What is given to us? Now, W is a point of minimum over T. And I am going to say that if X is an arbitrary point over here, then FW is less than equal to Fx. Now, okay, fine. How do you do that? Now, well, if X, that cone is convex, so what I do, I join W and X line segment. Okay, fine. So I will be looking at W plus some alpha times x minus w. This kind of, call it z or z alpha. Okay, where alpha is greater than equal to 0. So if you take alpha equal to 0, you get w only, and if you take alpha equal to 1, you get x. So alpha smaller, you will be nearby w. That's okay, no problem. Now what I am thinking, any z alpha, this z alpha, any point z alpha, it is in cone k only, because it is convex. W and x is there. This is true. Fine. That means every z alpha will satisfy AW z alpha is greater than equal to BW. That is the cone, na? Set of all x, or otherwise you multiply and see. That is fine. Now what about the complement, that is AW bar? Now what I know about AW bar, that AW bar W is strictly bigger than BW bar. It did not satisfy equality, because the rows satisfying equality were included in AW. These are the things that they were satisfying strict inequalities. Okay, and therefore by continuity I can choose alpha very small. Okay, choose alpha small, by continuity there exists alpha positive small, such that AW bar Z alpha will remain strictly bigger than BW bar. Okay, this is by continuity. Depending on how many rows you have, that many minimum of delta G will have to take. This you should be understanding by this time. I don't want to explain it now. This is calculus, only calculus. Okay, so that will happen. So in that case, what happens? In that case, you see A of Z alpha is greater than equal to B. It satisfies this. So which basically means Z alpha belongs to T, because it satisfies Ax greater than equal to B. Okay, Z alpha belongs to T, and Z alpha belongs to T means what? Now FW will be lesser than equal to F of Z alpha. What is F of Z alpha? Now F of Z alpha is F of W plus alpha times x minus w. Because f is linear, this will be equal to fw plus alpha times f of x minus w. So fw cancels. This automatically implies f of x is greater than equal to f of w. That is what we wanted to show. We wanted to show that w is minimized over w is the point, f is minimized at w over k. Okay, so what does that mean? F is minimized at w over k. That means x belongs to k implies fw, rather let me write C transpose w is less than equal to C transpose x. This is what we just proved. X belongs to k means what? Now it means AWX greater than equal to BW. BW is nothing but AWW. So this implies this. In other words, what we are saying, AW multiplied by x minus w greater than equal to 0 implies C transpose x minus w is greater than equal to 0. Take transpose, you have x minus w transpose AW transpose greater than equal to 0 implies X minus W transpose C greater than equal to 0. Now this one looking like Y transpose capital A greater than equal to 0 implies Y transpose B greater than equal to 0. This is the second condition of Farkas lemma, second equivalence condition of Farkas lemma. Now this is satisfied for all x. This will automatically imply the first condition. This is equivalent to saying that AWT Y equal to C has a non-negative solution by Farkas lemma. As I said, we will be using this. So by taking transpose, it basically means C transpose is Y transpose AW. That means there exists a non-negative Y such that C transpose is Y transpose AW, which we wanted to show. Okay, so that is the proof. Okay, so by Farkas lemma, it says so if I have given you one W, a vertex, and I am asking what are the linear functions that are minimized over here if the set is written in this format X greater than equal to B. Now those are precisely the non-negative linear combinations of the supporting hyperplanes. The functions given by the supporting hyperplanes. Essentially that is that. And further, if C transpose is a positive combination of rows of AW, then W becomes a strict minimum. This one is easy to show. Okay. A little, I mean, it's not very difficult to show at all, because what is that you want to show? Now you want to show here. C transpose X minus W, I want to show it is strictly bigger than 0. Okay, that is what. But then you said C transpose is a positive combination of the rows of AW. Okay. And what is W? Now W is a vertex. What is rank of AW? Now rank of AW has to be N, right? Because W is a vertex multiplied by X minus W. And X minus W, so here I am taking X is different from W. In that case, what are you saying? Now see, this X minus W, AWX minus AWW, okay, remember, what is this? I want to say that it is strict minimum. What is your X? Now X belongs to T. X not equal to W. Then I want to show that C transpose X is strictly bigger than C transpose W. But since X belongs to T, X belongs to K. What is that? Now K is the set of all X such that AWX is greater than equal to BW. Okay, so that means at X I have AWX minus BW is AWW is greater than equal to 0. So this thing is greater than equal to 0. Is it equal to 0? No, it cannot be equal to 0, because X minus W is a non-zero vector and AW has rank n. If the product is equal to 0, then AW cannot have rank n. So then what happens? Now this will be a non-negative vector with at least some positive entries. And what about lambda transpose? And lambda transpose has full positive entries. Therefore, the whole product will be positive. Okay, that's what it says. Okay, so here is the example. So suppose I am looking at, this is my set. The set is a convex hull of E1, 2E1, E2, 2E2, and then 2E1 plus 2E2. Fine. This is the set. Okay, the convex hull. Fine, no problem. Now I am asking what linear functions are going to be minimized at E1. Now in that case, you will have to look at the cone, affine cone structure at E1 that will contain the whole T positively. Now what is that affine cone structure? Now you will have one hyperplane. This is y2 greater than equal to 0. This one is, okay, this side up is y2 greater than equal to 0. So if I write, this will be 0, 1, y2 greater than equal to 0. And then this one, this hyperplane, and this side, positive side, this is, sorry, y, what I am saying, y2. I have only x1 and x2. So x2 greater than equal to 0. And what about this one? Now this one is x1 plus x2 equal to 1 is the hyperplane. And this side is x1 plus x2 greater than equal to 1. So x1 plus x2 greater than equal to 1. So this is, these are the hyperplanes. Okay. So the cone AWX greater than equal to BW. That is the cone. This is the cone. In any case, this is my AW. And what you have to do now, you have to take a non-negative combination of the rows. For example, 1 time first row plus 2 times second row. That will give you 2, 3. So that is your C transpose. And you take C transpose X. So that is one function, fx equal to 2x1 plus 3x2. Because it is a, what did you take? Now you take one times first row, 2 times second row. Both were positive. So actually this function will be strictly minimized at E1. Okay. In a similar way, if you are looking at 2, 2. Can you give one linear function that will be strictly minimized at 2, 2? Now before you do, first you have to express the set. For example, here the set you can write x1 less than equal to 2, that is this one, and x2 less than equal to 2, that is this one. But you have to write them in the form greater than equal to this. So it will be actually 0, okay, I have written the second one, -1, and then -1, 0. Okay, that will be AW if you take that. So that is -x1 greater than equal to -2. Because you have to write it, you have to view, keep the set in the positive, half spaces. Then only you say it is a non-negative combination of the rows of AW. Okay. Okay. I will tell something about the doubly stochastic matrices. Okay. Just few minutes I have, so I will tell about them. So what is a doubly stochastic matrix? Now a doubly stochastic matrix is a matrix. We are considering in 3 by 3. You can take it in n by n. So what is that? Now a doubly stochastic matrix means a non-negative matrix. Aij's are greater than equal to 0, and then row sum is equal to 1 and each column sum is equal to 1. Okay, so it's a non-negative matrix, square matrix. Each row sum is 1, each column sum is equal to 1. It's a doubly stochastic matrix. Okay, now in M3 R, M3 means M3 comma 3, M3 cross 3. Normally the square matrices we don't write 3 cross 3. Normally when I write M cross n or M comma n, this means all the matrices with M rows and n columns. Without anything written over here, these are real. If I want to write C, then I will write C. This means complex matrices, M by n matrices. But if I do not write anything, or sometimes I write R also, that will mean real. And when it is n by n matrices, normally people will simply write, 3 by 3 matrices, people will simply write 3. So why writing another additional symbol? So that's why they write. Okay, so in all the 3 by 3 real matrices, you look at all those x's. 3 by 3, okay, 3 by 3 real matrices such that x in M3 such that x is doubly stochastic. Okay, then it is since x is doubly stochastic, it automatically means there are this is a polyhedron, bounded polyhedron. It is of course a bounded polyhedron. This is a polyhedron because what do you have now? X11 plus x12 plus x13 is equal to 1, the first row sum. This can be written as intersection of two half spaces, that is less than equal to 1, greater than equal to 1. Okay, similarly you have the second row, third row, then the first column, second column and third column equality. In total you have 6 half spaces, that will give you intersection of 12 half spaces. And then you have xij greater than equal to 0. There are 9 entries, so you will have 9 half spaces. In total you will have 21 half spaces. So this set can be written as an intersection of 21 half spaces in R9. Okay, and so this is a polyhedron. This is bounded because each entry lies between 0 and 1, so there is a maximum norm. Okay, so it is bounded. It is non-empty because the identity matrix is sitting there, so it is a non-empty bounded polyhedron, so it is a compact convex subset. Now therefore a compact convex subset, and because being a polyhedron, it will have finitely many vertices. Okay, now the question is, what are its vertices? Now what you do, if you write any take an example of a this matrix. So let's say first entry is 0, second one is 0.2, third one is 0.8. Okay, this one is 0.5, so this one is 0.5, this one is 0, but that will make it difficult because you will require 0.5 here. You can have 0.1 over here, so you have to have 0.4, something like this. This is 0.4, 0.6, so this is 0.1, this one is 0.4. Okay, so this is a doubly stochastic matrix. Now once you have a doubly stochastic matrix, you can draw a bipartite graph with respect to it. Okay, these are for the rows, these are for the columns. This is 1, 2, 3 on the left, 1, 2, 3, and then 1 dash 2 dash, 3 dash. On the right, 1 dash, 2 dash, 3 dash on the right. Whenever you see an entry which is positive, from that vertex to that vertex, you draw a line. So from 1 to 1 dash, there is no line. 1 to 2 dash, there is a line. 1 to 3 dash, line of weight. You can put the weight. Weight is equal to 0.2. Then 1 to 3 dash, there is a line of some weight, no problem. Then 2 goes to 1 dash, 2 goes to everything, 2 dash, 2 goes to 3 dash, and then 3 goes to 1 dash, depending on what you have taken. This. Okay, I can draw a bipartite graph with respect to x. So if this is x, I will call this as gamma x. Okay. Now imagine I am looking at some gamma x. Some gamma x. I have 1, 2, 3, 1 dash, 2 dash, 3 dash. And in that I am looking at some edge whose weight is, let's say, it's some number which is not 0, not 1. Let's say it is 0.3. Now, because this weight is 0.3, so I am starting from here and gone, and I am reaching here. Okay, so this is my first vertex V1. I have come to V2. Okay. Now, because the incoming value is just 3, and at V2 it has to satisfy 1, so there has to be one more edge coming to V2 of positive value. Maybe something like this has to happen, at least some more positive value, and that will again be between 0 and 1. Okay, and you reach V3. Now again at V3 the total value has to be 1, but this is alpha you just entered, so there has to be, you have to go out via some edge somewhere, wherever you want to go. You have to go through some V4, and this has to continue, and therefore you will reach at a cycle. Somewhere you will find a cycle, because wherever you are entering, you are going out. Okay, you just started here, so this will continue unless there is a repetition. Repetition means you have got a cycle. Now what does a cycle mean? Now a cycle means a situation. So suppose you get a cycle something like this. Okay, and you come here. What does that mean? It means a situation where you are seeing entries. So here it is 2, 3, 2 dash, 3 dash. That means it will mean that this one, this one, this one, and this one, you are having a cycle. Okay, so from here to here, from here to here. So as soon as you get a cycle over here, so this is 2 to wherever you get, 2 to 2 dash, then 2 dash to 3, 3 to 3 dash, and 3 dash to 2. Okay, so and all those entries, all those weights of the edges are not 0, not 1. So what you do, you take the minimum weight and the maximum weight. Okay, and then choose an epsilon so small, so the smallest is not 0, the largest is not 1. Choose an epsilon so small, such that you write x is equal to the same thing as of here, except that here you write 4 plus epsilon, and you write 0.4 plus epsilon, 0.1 minus epsilon, and here you write 0.1 minus epsilon, and here you write 0.1 plus epsilon. It will also remain doubly stochastic. You just have adjusted. Similarly, so this is your x epsilon. Similarly, you can have x minus epsilon. Okay, and what you see is that x is half of x epsilon plus x minus epsilon. So x cannot be a vertex. So what you have proved is that if X is a doubly stochastic matrix having some entry which is not 0, not 1, then it cannot be a vertex. So if it has to be a vertex, all the entries have to be either 0 or 1. But since it is a doubly stochastic matrix, it means it has to be a permutation matrix, which basically means there are only 6 vertices, because I mean 3 by 3, there are only that many permutations, 3 factorial permutations. And you try the rest of the things. Okay. Yeah. Bye.